This is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
You got Celtics in 4? Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
That's it, GOG. Let's go. What do you think tonight?
You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about the
Let's go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not. No,
recently he's putting up games like
above our head for the players.
literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think right now
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do.
And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to Celtics Talk Weekly Postgame Live. I am your host, Seamus, and as you see here on the bottom of the screen, the Boston Celtics defeat the Los Angeles Lakers 111-101 on the Garden floor on NBA ABC Saturday primetime. This one was one of the more hyped games of the entire year for the Boston Celtics as the Los Angeles Lakers come into the TD Garden looking like a new basketball team, a new contending team out there on the West horizon with LeBron James and Luka Dončić. Luka Dončić's first game at the Garden as a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, Luka Dončić's last game at the TD Garden coming in the NBA Finals last year in the 2020-24 NBA Finals. Luka Dončić last played in the TD Garden for the Dallas Mavericks, of course, but now he's on the Los Angeles Lakers. But anyway, getting into this game ultimately between the Celtics and Lakers, a couple things, just get to some couple notes here. A couple things that stood out to me is, well, number one, the Los Angeles Lakers are a legitimate threat in the Western Conference and just a legitimate threat for the NBA championship. Now, do I believe the Los Angeles Lakers are the favorite to win the NBA title this year? No, I'm not. I wouldn't. Would they be top 5 potentially? I'm not sure, but I would not place them at number 1, number 2, or number 3 right now, as I think those spots ultimately go to the Celtics, they go to the Cavs, the Thunder, and then the Denver Nuggets as well. I think those are your 4 favorite teams in the NBA right now as it stands in March of 2025, looking ahead at the potential 2025 champion. But right now, the Lakers, can they be in that mix of teams with those top 4 teams, or can they be in that mix of teams that's actually contending for a title? The Lakers, certainly so, because this game against the Boston Celtics, the Celtics didn't win it easily. Now, if we look at the lead tracker for this game, the Boston Celtics, their biggest lead was 22, and you see that early in the fourth quarter, or even I should say late in the third quarter, early in the fourth. But the Lakers, they were right there for most of the game. You see how many times the lead changed 9 times in this game. The Lakers actually held the lead for a good majority of that first half there, but the Boston Celtics went into half on a nice run. Got the crowd up on their feet right before half, which I really think is important for this Boston Celtics team just in general in terms of really going out ahead of teams and closing out games, ending runs where we see the Boston Celtics here. We'll get after it here in a little bit, talking about where the Celtics, I shouldn't say went wrong, but the Celtics certainly didn't close out this game the way you necessarily might want them to from a dominant performance standpoint. But I think the end of quarters is important for doing that for any team out there in the NBA, specifically the Boston Celtics at home. That's what they did before halftime in this game. You see they followed it up there in the third quarter going on. Really the third quarter in this game for the Boston Celtics was nearly a perfect contest. And then you see the fourth quarter a little more rough for the Celtics, but they were able to maintain their lead, reestablish their lead late in the fourth, and then come out with a quality win. Biggest lead of the game was 22, but don't fool yourself. This was a competitive game for most of the contest. As you see, the Lakers led there early on in the first half. The Celtics took over in the second half. But really, what you can see on that lead tracker is the Lakers, the Los Angeles Lakers with Luka Dončić and LeBron James. They're competitive. They're ultimately competitive. And coming into this game, the Los Angeles Lakers held an 8-game winning streak, which the Celtics completely snapped on their home floor in front of the home crowd. And the Los Angeles Lakers, they hadn't lost since that Charlotte Hornets game coming back from All-Star break nearly a month ago already. I should say really half a month ago, 3 weeks ago, as it's been. But the Los Angeles Lakers, what stood out to me, number one, is just the fact that this team is going to be competitive. The Celtics played the Lakers. They beat the Lakers. A couple of weeks ago, they saw a completely different Lakers team with Anthony Davis. Max Christie was out there, of course. Luka Dončić not out there for the Los Angeles Lakers a couple of weeks ago when the Boston Celtics just completely succumbed to the Lakers out in Los Angeles. But this game felt a little bit different. That Los Angeles game, the Celtics rolled over on the second night of a back-to-back. They were on a West Coast road trip. You can give all the excuses you want for the Celtics. It was a putrid game, no matter how you slice it. But regardless, the Celtics, they didn't show their energy in that game against the Los Angeles Lakers. This game, Celtics certainly came out with more energy, but the Lakers, looking at their team as a whole, I believe that this Lakers team is more competitive in playing the Boston Celtics than that Lakers team of a couple weeks ago, even though that Lakers team blew out the Celtics by nearly 20 points. This Lakers team at the TD Garden, they were competitive. I mean, it was 33-33 after the first quarter, and it felt like throughout most of the first quarter, it had the vibes of the Lakers are actually playing ahead of the Boston Celtics. Very indicative in that lead tracker, too. You can see that purple at the beginning if you go back and look at that. The purple at the beginning, that's really the time period in which it felt like the Lakers, they could be increasing their lead here a little bit. They could be going out in front of the Boston Celtics, but it just never quite happened to the fullest of extents. And then the Boston Celtics ended up being the team in the third quarter that went on the run. And then, of course, the Lakers, as the game went along in that fourth quarter, the Boston Celtics kind of let their foot off the gas just a little bit yet again. That's a constant theme with this particular Boston Celtics team trying to go back to back this year. Is they have moments of absolute brilliance, like we saw in the third quarter of this game, yet late in the game, the Celtics kind of revert back into a form of themselves that didn't get them to where they were in the first place, which is with a 22-point lead. And that lead was once cut down all the way to 4 in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, with a pretty good amount of time left for the Lakers to make a comeback. But ultimately, the Boston Celtics in this game, if we want to talk about the way the team played in their entirety, and then we'll get into the more individual performances. The Celtics played aggressive on the defensive end of the floor. I thought they were extremely aggressive on the defensive end of the floor, and it really led to the Celtics offense clicking for most of the game. Now, you look at the lead tracker, already looked at it, but if we want to look at it again here, what eventually attained Boston that 22-point lead there in the third quarter, and what we really see the rest of the game. I guess we'll get into it here a little bit, but you look at the lead tracker, the Boston Celtics in this game, what really got them out to the lead was defense leading into transition, leading into points on the fast break. That is what Boston did so well in this game. And they really, in a sense, beat the Lakers at part of what they wanted to do in this game. The Lakers are top 10 in fast break points for the season for the entire league. And the Boston Celtics, if you look at the amount of, if you look at the percentage of points that come off fast break opportunities in the league, and you hit the little arrow at the top, right? The Celtics, if you hit that arrow twice, they're going to be at the top of the list, meaning they're 30th, which if you hit that arrow once, they're going to be at the bottom. The Boston Celtics, they don't score many points in the fast break in transition. They're one of the teams they're a team in the league that doesn't do that very frequently compared to other squads. And the Boston Celtics, that's when I think in these sort of circumstances here against a team that does do that, when you're beating them at their game, you think about the Nuggets game from last Sunday. These are two games at the Garden that people have to be impressed with the Boston Celtics over, just from the standpoint of the Celtics were able to beat other teams at their game, at their own advantages. The Celtics were able to take an advantage from another team, make it a disadvantage, and make it an advantage for themselves. The Nuggets game on Sunday, the Nuggets, another team, scores a lot of points in transition. The Nuggets like to get out and run. Yes, they can play in the half court, slow things down. That's what gives people the confidence that the Nuggets could be there later on down the line, is the fact they can play multiple ways. But the Nuggets do like to run in transition, like to create turnovers, like to get out on the fast break and score in transition, whether it's flare out threes to Michael Porter in the corner on the wing, Jamal Murray running in transition, getting open points at the rim, or just some of their athletic guards like Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, of course, who's hurt right now. But some of those guys for Denver, even Aaron Gordon, those guys in transition really get after it for the Nuggets. And of course, you have Nikola Jokic, who can just sling 30-yard passes down the floor like it's nothing. And that's really why the Nuggets are so good in transition and want to win in transition. Lakers are a little bit of the same. They have a couple of athletes that can really get out and run in transition. Of course, you have two of the best passers in the NBA on the Lakers with Luka and LeBron, specifically talking about this version of the Lakers team right now. The Lakers, as they're currently constructed, they have athletes all over the place. Shooting is a little bit questionable at times, but it does seem like there's some shooting out there. And you have two of the best offensive players, arguably still in the NBA to this day, in Luka and LeBron. Like I already said, there's some of the best playmakers, some of the best passers as well. But those teams like that, with a lot of athletes who like to get out and run, with good passers who can pass up court, and good defensive teams too. The Lakers and the Nuggets, they're not terrible defensive teams. Those teams like to get out and run. And the Celtics in these games against the Lakers and the Nuggets, well, they didn't allow the Nuggets to get out and run. They didn't allow the Lakers to get out and run. And instead, the team who actually got out and ran, it was the Boston Celtics. And considering the Boston Celtics, they don't typically win games like that. And they're facing teams who do win games like that. And they're beating those teams, the Nuggets and the Lakers specifically this time around, at their own games. Well, that's when the Boston Celtics, they pull out a result like this and they take a lead, as they did, the 22-point lead in this game. And of course, the 10-point win at the end. The Celtics, when they're doing that, if any team is doing that, if they're taking an advantage for another team, making it a disadvantage for them, and then making it an advantage for themselves, that's when a team can really get out, score some points, and really go ahead of their opponent in any performance out there. So that's what stood out for this game in particular, is just the Celtics' defensive aggression leading to turnovers, leading to points in transition, and then the Celtics just playing aggressive on the offensive end for most of this game. And one thing that also stood out as well, going on to another point here, is just the fact the Celtics, we're talking more on the defensive end here, and we could talk offensively about this too, but really honing in on the defensive end, because this is where it was the biggest for most of the night, is the Boston Celtics won the mismatch battle. They absolutely won the mismatch battle in this game, because looking at who the Lakers were trying to attack, looking at the Celtics rotation, it was Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard. Now, you can say Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett as well, but they only played 11 minutes each in this game, and Horford and Pritchard took on a much bigger role in terms of their minutes. Well, in those mismatch opportunities for the Los Angeles Lakers against Pritchard, against Horford, Pritchard and Horford were phenomenal. I mean, they were exquisite out there. Those two players for the Boston Celtics, from a defensive perspective, they went above and beyond in this Laker game right here. Above and beyond, because the Lakers, they tried to pick on Horford. They tried to pick on Peyton Pritchard, and it didn't work. That when it was early in the game, and really in the third quarter too, where it was seen evidently, from at least my perspective, I would say a lot of people's perspective out there, that the Lakers, they were trying to run specific sets towards certain players, again, Pritchard, Horford, on the offensive end of the floor. And from that standpoint, they could not break the Celtics line. They could not break Al Horford. They could not break Peyton Pritchard. And both of those guys, not only did they not break and they stood firm, they actually created turnovers, in which led to the Celtics getting out, running in transition, creating points. And let's also face the fact too, when you get out and run in transition as a basketball team, and you're really getting out there, the entire crowd, if you're home, right? If you're the Boston Celtics and you're at home, the entire crowd, from those transition opportunities, the turnovers that lead into the running, the sprinting down the floor, and then to an eventual either layup or dunk, a hard layup or dunk in the NBA, if you really want to talk about it, at the rim, those moments, those moments of tempo, those moments get the crowd on their feet, gets the crowd on their feet. And really, the Boston Celtics, I think, as of late at home, it's been a ride at the TD Garden this year, talking about the home crowd and, oh, can the home crowd affect the team as they used to? Because it does feel like there is a sense in the home crowd that they're not pleased with good play for as long as they used to be. Nowadays, the Boo Birds come out so easily. I mean, the team, they go on an 8-0 run against an opponent, right? Rather, the Boston Celtics, you allow the Lakers to go on an 8-0 run, and all of a sudden your 20-point lead is down to 12. Then the Lakers make another bucket, and then it's down to 10. At that point in time, the Boo Birds come out. They just come out. They last decade, and even decades prior, it used to be a cardinal sin to boo your team. Nowadays, it just feels like the crowd just boos whenever something bad happens, something minimally bad happens. And not only that is they don't cheer they don't cheer it as hard. It seems as if that's the case. I mean, there's no data to suggest one way or another, but it's not it's not perceived as if the crowd cheers as hard or gets up on their feet as ruckusly as they used to in decades prior, specifically at the TD Garden. This has been a topic of conversation. We've talked about it in regard to ticket prices, just the changing demographic of the NBA fandom. But really, if you look at it out there, the Boston Celtics last season compared to this season, and not saying all these changes happen in one season, but last year, the Boston Celtics clicked at home. They were rolling at home. They barely lost at home. This year, they were nearly floating around a 500 record at home for part of the season. And now the Celtics, of course, are putting some wins on their record on their home floor as they're in the midst of a 7-game homestand right now. So certainly some opportunity for the Boston Celtics to put some wins up there. But the home crowd it doesn't seem as if the home crowd has helped the Boston Celtics as much this season as it has in seasons prior. Yet, if you look at what the Celtics do or don't do on a basketball court, and we were just talking about this, the fast break opportunities for the Boston Celtics aren't there this year. They're not there frequently. And when they are there, the Boston Celtics, that's typically when we see them building up their leads, really getting the crowd on their feet. Of course, that we're talking about that as the general topic right now. But those transition opportunities, the lack thereof, when the Celtics get those opportunities, that's what can get a crowd on their feet. And I really thought in this game, and even in the Denver game, as well. The Celtics did a good job of coming up with plays that gave the crowd something to cheer about. And from that, the Boston Celtics took that momentum and actually rode it a little bit more throughout these games. And we, of course, saw the comebacks by the Nuggets and the Lakers in particular, but the Boston Celtics, for the most part, were in control of these games. And a large part due to themselves, but also due to the fact the crowd uplifted the Boston Celtics at certain points in these games. And the Celtics did a much better job of coming up with the plays, the hustle plays, the transition plays in order to do that. So the Celtics, they were phenomenal from an aggression standpoint on the defensive end of the floor and really not letting the Lakers attack their mismatches and get an advantage within the mismatch category because Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard, specifically those two players, we all know a guy like Drew Holiday, who played in this game, by the way, Kristaps Porzingis, should mention this, no Kristaps Porzingis in this game, no Rui Hachimura in this game, and also LeBron left with about, it was 6:44, so about the 6 minute mark, halfway point of the fourth quarter. LeBron left the game with what was then deemed a groin strain, which LeBron will now be out 1 to 2 weeks with. So just to disclaim that here before we start talking about some individual players, but we all know Drew Holiday can defend. This was Drew Holiday's first game back from a little bit of an absence there, too. We'll disclaim that one. But Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, we all know these guys can defend. It's some of the other players on the Celtics roster in which we're looking at going, okay, what kind of matchups can these guys really be in? Kristaps Porzingis, for as all right of a defender and a deterrer as Kristaps Porzingis is, he can be that player at times that teams sometimes want to get mismatches on depending on who the player is. But Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, basically everybody off the bench, Luke Cornett as well, Kata, all of the players off the bench, they're going to be questioned. as potential mismatches for other teams, particularly come playoff time. And really, you look at the two players who played the most off the bench in this game, and one was not a bench player because of Kristaps Porzingis' absence, but usually is, and that was Al Horford. But Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard, their defensive aggression, their ability to stand firm on the defensive end of the floor, and their ability to create not only stops but turnovers for the Celtics, that was what made a huge difference in this ball game. And Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard deserve a ton of praise, a ton of credit for what they did in this ball game, and it really tied in with the rest of the Celtics team doing what they were able to do out there on both ends of the floor, which is really overachieved from a transition standpoint. Offensively, it was clicking the offense, the up-tempo offense, the offense with pace. I want to see the Celtics push the pace on the offensive end a lot more. The offense was clicking from a pace standpoint. Guys were moving a lot, passing the ball a lot more than you typically might see from a just random regular season game from the Boston Celtics. And so, really looking at the offensive end of the floor was up tempo, and the defensive end had something to do with that as well because the Celtics were aggressive on the defensive end. They were forcing turnovers, they were getting out and running, and they weren't allowing Luka and LeBron just to carve them up. Like Luka and LeBron, looking at those two guys specifically, there's a lot more pressure put on Luka and LeBron to make plays in this game and score themselves than for others because really the defense, the Celtics defense was up in Luka and LeBron's grill for most of this game. And the Celtics defense too, they were rotating well to the Lakers shooters in this contest too. So the Lakers, if you look at really really this game and how it played out, the mismatch battle specifically, the Boston Celtics won that battle, but not only won that battle, they won other battles on the floor on both ends, whether it was defensively getting up into the Lakers' grill or offensively playing with more of a tempo, more of a pace, and really putting the Lakers on their toes a lot more. But I just want to reiterate, though, Al Horford, we're talking about him a little bit with him and Peyton Pritchard being really the guys on the defensive end of the floor that the Lakers wanted to hunt and just weren't huntable. I mean, if you really want to use that word, the Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard, the Lakers wanted to hunt those guys on the defensive end of the floor, or rather on the offensive end of the floor for the Lakers, and they just couldn't do it. Pritchard and Horford came up big, but I really want to talk about and hone in on Al Horford because Peyton Pritchard, he's a younger player, spry player. We know Pritchard's energy level is there every single night. Obviously, Peyton Pritchard, his best attribute is scoring the basketball, shooting the basketball, handling the basketball, but defensively too, we know Peyton Pritchard does have some skill in that regard, whether it's his IQ from a defensive standpoint or really just his activity on that end of the floor. But Al Horford, looking at him, he's approaching the LeBron age bracket, which LeBron, the first game, or I should say second game against the Boston Celtics as a 40-year-old, Al Horford is nearly in that age bracket now as a near 40-year-old. 38-year-old Al Horford is a player who most of us thought might be done a while ago, might be done after last season, after the Celtics won the championship, might be done before he even made it back to the Celtics in 21-22. Al Horford, once he left the Celtics and started bouncing around a little bit with the Philadelphia 76ers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, it seemed as if Al Horford's career was just going to be, oh, well, this is somebody with an inflated bad contract who can't really reap the production, or a team can't reap the production of what his relative worth of his contract actually is relative to his play. He's probably going to be a guy who hops around, lives out the rest of his contract, might sign a minimum, might be done in the league. That was just a couple of years ago. Now, Al Horford, I really do believe Al Horford could be an essential piece on this Boston Celtics playoff team, this 2024-25 Celtic team going back to back, or we're trying to go back to back rather, in winning the championship. Al Horford, with what he has done this month in its entirety, has been spectacular relative to what we saw earlier this season. Earlier this season, Al Horford was a negative to the Boston Celtics, an absolute negative. The whole point of having Al Horford out on the floor earlier this season, what was the point? Because earlier Al Horford, for even though Al Horford was a defensive anchor at different times out on the floor earlier in the year, it's not as if Al Horford's defensive aggression was coming out every single night and he was just the typical Giannis stopper he is. Meanwhile, offensively, Al Horford was just somebody who stood in the corner, somebody who stood on the wing, somebody who really wasn't involved in the offense that much other than getting the ball and shooting it. Al Horford was just a prolific 3-point shooter in the month of specifically December and then going into January as well. Most of Al Horford's shots came from 3-point land, and Al Horford just wasn't involved in the offense in its entirety. And defensively, he had his moments, but he wasn't there every single night. Well, now, as we get into March, Al Horford is showing signs, specifically in the big games, that he may be an actual contributor, an actual key contributor, that is, to the Boston Celtics rotation come playoff time. Because as of now, Kristaps Porzingis, he's healthy. That's great. Kristaps, and I shouldn't even say that. Kristaps Porzingis technically isn't healthy. He missed tonight's game, and he missed a couple of games prior to this game. So technically, Kristaps isn't healthy right now, but it's deemed as an illness. So we'll have to see exactly what that is. Doesn't seem like a ligament, a leg. Nothing going on there. It's an illness. So technically, Kristaps isn't healthy right now. But speaking of his actual bodily health, outside of him potentially being ill, talking about his ankles, his knees, his hips, his shoulders, all of his joints and ligaments, seems as if Kristaps Porzingis is relatively healthy right now. That being said, Kristaps Porzingis is somebody who is a little bit injury prone, missed most of the playoffs last year dealing with injuries for the Boston Celtics. So, looking at the Celtics big man rotation, there's a reason it's beefed up to 5 guys. It is because Kristaps Porzingis, the all-star starting center of the Boston Celtics, he's a little bit injury prone. And you go down to Al Horford. He's, of course, almost 40 years old. He's 38 years old, will be 39 years old if the Boston Celtics make the finals. But just looking at the big man rotation of the Boston Celtics, it's beefed up because of the injury prone player in Porzingis at the top starting, and then Al Horford being the 38-year-old he is. But the point here is on the big man rotation being beefed up, Al Horford is part of that beef. Now it's in part due to Al Horford too being 38 years old, nearly 39 years old this season. The big man rotation fills out with Kornet, Kata, and Tillman after Porzingis and Horford at the top. Now, it's in part because of Al Horford that big man rotation is filled out the way it is. But Al Horford is very much a part of it from the standpoint of backing up Kristaps Porzingis and even being a big guy who could slot in and start and give the Celtics tremendous minutes if Porzingis were to go out of the lineup. And that's what we saw Al Horford do last year when Kristaps Porzingis went out of the lineup and was injured throughout most of the playoffs. But Al Horford, specifically this season, there were questions about whether Al Horford could do that again or not. Specifically at the beginning of the season, you look at really November, December into January. Most of us were looking around, going, "Yikes!" Al Horford. Good playoff run last year, good contribution to the Celtics, unexpected last year, but is he going to actually be able to do that same thing this year with the Boston Celtics? And a lot of people looked at him and went, not really seeing it right now with Al Horford. Yet, within the last month and even the big games, I want to really hone in on that and put a point of emphasis on that, is the big games, okay? The big primetime ABC, ESPN, TNT, whatever network you want to say, the big time games. Al Horford shows up for those games. He does. And really, offensively, we can look at Al Horford's stat sheet, whatever he shot from the field, however many points he scored, how many threes he made, was he going down low, what was he doing from an offensive standpoint. And we can tell how aggressive Al Horford was or wasn't on the offensive end of the floor. But really, the biggest gauge for this Al Horford ascension in these big games is the defensive end of the floor. Defensively, Al Horford at his current age, it doesn't make sense what he's doing. I mean, the same way it doesn't make sense looking at LeBron and the Celtics face tonight. The Celtics and LeBron James, they've been battling for decades. Now, it doesn't make any sense what LeBron James is currently still doing as really the second best player on his team, still still top 10 player in the NBA, I would say, up to this day, even at age 40. Doesn't make any sense what LeBron James is doing, but Al Horford deserves the same tag because Al Horford at 38 years old, he can still guard up on a guy like Luka Dončić. He can still guard up on a guy like Steph Curry. He can still guard up on somebody like Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland and still hold his own. Is he going to be the perfect defender for those players? The perfect matchup for those players? No. And do other teams want to attack that mismatch? Yes. Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett already said it. These other teams are going to want to attack those mismatches. But Al Horford, he can stand his ground. He can contest shots. He can deter shots. He can make things tough on these smaller ball handlers, these smaller guards. Al Horford, at his age, it makes absolutely no sense the way he moves out there defensively. His positioning, now from an IQ standpoint, his positioning is always pristine out there on the floor, but really his athleticism, his agility, his quickness, Al Horford, looking at all those categories for Al Horford, is it the best amongst all bigs in the NBA? Is it the best amongst all players in the NBA? No, but for Al Horford's age and for the job in which Al Horford is asked to do out on a basketball floor, what Al Horford is doing right now is going over expectations for himself as a 38-year-old. And it's coming specifically in these big games, in the big primetime games, in the games in which the Celtics look at and go, this on our schedule is just a different game. Just a different game. And looking at how Al Horford and the Celtics play in their entirety in these games, I would say they understand that from a locker room perspective as much as the fans do from an outsider's perspective. Because there's no other explanation. Al Horford on a random Tuesday night versus the Raptors, doesn't look amazing. The whole team doesn't look amazing. Yet in a Saturday primetime event, a game against the Los Angeles Lakers, against Luka Dončić, against LeBron James, the Celtics, they're playing with energy. They're playing with intensity. They're playing aggressive on the defensive end of the floor. They're rotating crisply. Offensively, they're getting the ball moving. Guys are cutting. Guys are moving on the offensive end of the floor. And more specifically, in terms of the individual performances, Al Horford is getting after it on both ends of the floor and really making a positive impact for the Boston Celtics and not just an impact as he was earlier this season. But really getting on to other points here, looking at this game for the Boston Celtics, we were going to get into this regarding the lead tracker a little bit earlier, but we'll get into it now. Is the Celtics, they take their foot off the gas a little bit in games, and that's definitely fair to say. Looking at the Celtics' recent track record, I mean, look at the 3 big games as of late. And that Nuggets game, too, for Al Horford. Stepped up in that game as well. We totally forgot about that game. He won player spotlight in that event against Nikola Jokic, a top 5, I shouldn't say top 5, the best big in the NBA, the best center in the NBA, Al Horford showed up against. So, well, more kudos to Al Horford. But looking at the 3 big games as of late, right? Let's start here. So, the Cleveland game, the Denver game, and the Laker game. Obviously, they didn't all play out the same as the Celtics went 2-1 in those games. The games looked very different. The game plan looked different. But from the lead tracker's perspective, right? The Celtics, they sort of committed the same type of lead tracker for these games. Now, the result in the end was a little bit different, and some of the flow was a little bit different for sure. But against Cleveland, the Boston Celtics come out with a 25-3 lead, 22-point lead at the beginning of the game. And then the rest of the game, Cleveland just chips away, chips away, chips away. Celtics put it back up to 17 in the third quarter, but then Cleveland chips away, chips away, chips away. And eventually Cleveland chips all the way away and wins the game. Everybody knows that game because the Celtics actually lost that game to the Cleveland Cavaliers after what was a 22-point lead in the first quarter and then a 17-point lead in the third quarter. Looking at the Nuggets game, same sort of thing starts working out. The Celtics, they have a lead early. They start adding on to that lead. It's not chipped away immediately. The Celtics grow the lead to nearly 20 points. I believe they grew it over 20 points, if I'm not mistaken, or right at 20 points, somewhere around the 20-point mark. And then the Nuggets chip away, chip away, chip away. Now the Celtics eventually fend off the Nuggets at the end of the game to grab a nice, I believe, 7-point win on Sunday against Denver. But then on Saturday, or I should say on Saturday, on Saturday against the Los Angeles Lakers. Tonight, the Los Angeles Lakers, they go down 22 points. And what do? At the end of the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, chip away, chip away, chip away. The Boston Celtics look at only a 4-point lead at a certain point in the fourth quarter with more than enough time for the Lakers to come back in the game. But as we all know, the Lakers didn't come back in this game, and the Boston Celtics won it by 10. But just looking at those lead trackers and those flows, a constant theme arises. And this is not a constant theme of the Boston Celtics that is just constant over the last 3 games. It's a constant theme this season in general in these bigger games. And it can be a theme whether the Celtics won or not. And it's the Celtics going out, maintaining a big lead, and then allowing it to slip away, slip under their belt, wash away from them. And the question is here, is that concerning in regard to the Celtics? Because for me, I look at it and go, okay, the Celtics clearly have enough talent to go out and grab a 20-point lead against a team like the Nuggets, against a team like the Cavs, against a team like the Lakers. Had 20-point leads in all of these games, right? Clearly have the talent to do that. And that's really what I'm focusing in on here. The Celtics clearly have the talent to do that. But at what point is the unhealthy habit of allowing teams back into games going to just shed itself away from the Boston Celtics? Is it playoff time? Is it when the Celtics enter the playoffs? Is that the moment when the Celtics just go, you know what? We're done giving up leads. We're going to play the full 48 minutes. Is it really the playoffs where that's going to stop? Because the Celtics, they haven't been great this season at maintaining leads. They just haven't been great. You look at some of the leads they've grown this season only to give up, particularly late in games. I'll say this too. It's usually in the second half of games. It's usually in the fourth quarter of games. The Celtics just cannot hold on to leads. And it's typically because the Boston Celtics, they play well. Like I said earlier, they were playing aggressive on the defensive end of the floor, coming up with stops, coming up with turnovers, getting out and running in transition, turning those transition opportunities into points, playing with pace, getting stops, playing with pace, pushing the ball down the floor, driving it to the hole, aggressively moving the ball on the offensive end of the floor. The Celtics, that's what they were doing well at the beginning of this game against the Los Angeles Lakers. But what got the Lakers back into the game and what put the Celtics in a spot where they had to defend only a 4-point lead, aside from a 20-point lead that they saw earlier in the game, late in the game, they had to defend that 4-point lead. The Celtics did. What put the Celtics in that position is the Celtics reverting to a form of themselves that didn't get them where they got to in the first place, which is on the defensive end of the floor, standing around, not rotating with intent, with purpose on the defensive end of the floor, not playing aggressively on ball, not getting up into the grills of the Lakers ball handlers and Lakers playmakers. And then offensively, that affects the offensive end of the floor too. We talk about defense affecting the offense. Well, looking at this game, the Boston Celtics, what got the Lakers back into the game at the end was the Celtics couldn't hit a shot at the end of the game. They really couldn't. I mean, outside of the moment when which the Celtics resurmounted the lead late there in the fourth, going as the game went on, as the game got later and later and later into the game, that kind of middle to end fourth quarter, the Boston Celtics on the offensive end of the floor couldn't make a shot. And really the reason why was the fact the offense slowed down, a lot of stagnant movement, not a lot of movement off ball, a lot of dribbling the ball from Brown and Tatum, whoever was handling the ball out there for the Celtics, a lot of dribbling, and then into a lot of tough shots. Luckily, the Celtics were able to hit a couple of those tough shots at the end, particularly from beyond the three-point arc, and that's what put the Celtics lead a little too far away for the Lakers to grab at the end. The Celtics, they really won this game at the end of this game on some just very, very nice offensive rebounding opportunities by Derek White, Drew Holiday kicking the ball back out, and then the Celtics making a three-pointer, whether it was Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. That's how the Celtics won this game to close it out. But before those moments, before those great offensive rebounding moments, before those three-point shots off of unselfish hockey passes, which we want to see more of out of the Boston Celtics, outside of those moments, the Boston Celtics were a little stagnant on the offensive end of the floor. Not a lot of movement, not a lot of passing, a lot of questionable shots that weren't going in. And really looking at the end of the game too, the Celtics, I always gauge this out during a basketball game is which team does it look easier for? Which team does it look easier for? Does it look easier for opponent A or opponent B? In this particular circumstance, the Boston Celtics, it didn't look easy for them on the offensive end of the floor, and part of that was their own stagnation, the decreased pace. Think about putting the Lakers on their toes, really making them run versus allowing them to just stand around, allowing them to preserve their energy when they're trying to come back into a game. It was part of the Celtics' own doing, but also the Lakers as well, shutting down the offense of the Boston Celtics, and really on the offensive end of the floor for the Lakers, continuously creating themselves good opportunities, which was turned into points. And then that, of course, goes down and slows down the Celtics offense. So defensively, offensively, it went hand in hand for the Boston Celtics and taking their foot off the gas at the end of the game. Defensively, the Celtics weren't as aggressive in rotating, not as aggressive on ball. The Lakers, seeing that decreased pressure on themselves, made easier passes, took easier shots, made more shots, created more points for themselves. And then from that, the Celtics, instead of getting out and running in transition off of stops and off of turnovers, the Boston Celtics were passing the ball in, walking the ball up the floor. Then the offense from there was just stagnant because you had one player dribbling the ball. The offense wasn't necessarily moving outside of the one action that might come at the top of the key, which has been a problem for the Celtics offense for part of this season. But the Celtics, looking at the reason as to why the Lakers were able to come back into this game and the Celtics had to defend a single digit lead at the end, it really had to do a lot with how the Celtics went away with what was initially working. And a lot of what went away, when I say what went away, I should say the Celtics, what they went away from, that is just playing hard, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. The Celtics, they have these moments where they don't play hard. They play hard for three quarters. They play hard for a quarter and a half. And then for a half of a quarter or a whole quarter, the Celtics will just kind of cruise a little bit. And that's what it felt like they did in this game at times, especially towards the end, as they grabbed that 20-point lead in the third quarter. And then they kind of felt like, okay, now we're kind of in defend mode of defending this lead for the rest of the game instead of constantly attacking and putting more points up on the board, not allowing more points from the Lakers on the board, and doing what they did in order to get themselves the lead in the first place. And that's what we see in sports all the time, whether it's football, basketball, it doesn't matter which sport it is. When you grab that big lead, the Celtics have been great at going out and attaining leads this season, but maintaining it is a different conversation. It's a different question. And you really see a lot of the times teams just become complacent. They become complacent no matter what sport it is. They get out to a big lead and go, all right, we were just, most of the time, teams are aggressive in getting out to those big leads in any sport. I'm going to put this, I'm going to put an emphasis on that. Any sport, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, whatever it is, soccer, you get out to a big lead in a sport. And from that, teams just go and revert into almost it's a they're trying to preserve their lead, a preserving state. That's the word I was trying to come up with. Preserving state. Teams go into a state of wanting to preserve their lead rather than add on to it. And they take away some of their aggression. What got any team a lead in the first place is their aggression, their execution within their own game plan. And from that, teams sometimes back off a little bit. They slack off, specifically talking about basketball. They slack off on the defensive end of the floor. They don't get after it as hard. Offensively, there's a lot more dribbling, a lot more bleeding of the clock. You think about in football a lot, guys are offenses specifically, offensive coordinators, head coaches, they're running the ball a lot. Maybe they're not attacking from a passing perspective as much later in games. If they already have a 2 to 3 touchdown lead, they're likely running the ball. And from that, what happens is the complexity of the game changes its entirety. The entire complexity of the game changes entirely. It just does. And excuse me. And really looking at this game between the Celtics and Lakers, the complexity of the game changed later in the game when the Celtics took their foot off the gas, realized that we have a 22-point lead. We can play a little bit slower, play a little bit more laxed. And from that, the Lakers came back, made it a 4-point game, and the Celtics needed to rejuvenate themselves from an energy standpoint later in the game to actually come out with the victory. I mean, like I already mentioned, a couple of nice offensive rebounding attempts and opportunities for guys like Drew Holiday and Derek White made all of the difference in this one near the end, and the Celtics hitting threes off of those opportunities. But without those, I mean, really, the Celtics, they were running in mud in this fourth quarter. They really were. And I just wonder later on down the line, in about 2 months, is this going to be a topic in which Celtics Nation is talking about come playoff time? Because the Celtics, they've been great at maintaining leads, or I should say, attaining a lead. Just attaining the lead, period. The Celtics have been great this season, but maintaining the lead is a much, much different story for the Boston Celtics. And I wonder if it's going to be the scenario looking at the NBA playoffs, the 2025 NBA playoffs. I'm wondering if we're going to see a scenario in which the Boston Celtics, what we see out of the Celtics is the Celtics attaining leads and just blowing teams out of the water in the NBA playoffs. That's what we saw last year out of the 2024 Boston Celtics. The 2025 Celtics are really no different, other than the fact their effort level has been down here, considering the hunger and the relative talent is different everywhere else surrounding the Boston Celtics. But last year, we saw the Celtics attain leads and run away in games with those leads. Are we going to see that from the Boston Celtics? Are they duping us this year with some of the big leads and then not really being able to maintain these leads? Or are we going to continuously have the conversation of the Celtics grabbing leads and not being able to maintain them to the fullest of extents, to the point where it's a little bit of an issue during the playoffs, if not a big issue, come playoff time? So that's just something to keep an eye out for in regard to the Boston Celtics. Another thing I want to get to here, and this is actually a good segue into our SeatGeek player spotlight, in which you see the man on the top of the screen here, but let's pull him up fully. It's Mr. Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum wins the Celtics Talk Weekly SeatGeek player spotlight against the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, head on over to SeatGeek and use the code Celtics Weekly for 20% off your first purchase at SeatGeek. SeatGeek, of course, has all the best prices, all the best seats. Go out there, folks, and go get yourself some tickets to a game, whether you're gifting them to a family member or even to yourself. Go out there and experience the big world of the NBA out there. It's very, very, very good time of year, I will say, in the NBA. A lot of games coming down to the wire, a lot of standings to be had. We'll see what happens with the standings later on in time, but you can go view what happens, of course, at an arena nearest to you with SeatGeek. Don't forget to check out SeatGeek and use code Celtics Weekly at checkout for 20% off your first purchase. But getting to Jason Tatum, 40 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, nearly a triple-double for Jason Tatum. 2 assists shy of that mark, but 12 of 28 from the floor, 10 of 12 from 3. You know, that 10 of 12 mark, I'm not even gonna lie, guys. That's up on screen. That mark is so crazy that I would almost bet that is a typo. It has to be. He was 10 of 12 from the free throw line, folks. There we go. Okay. So Jason Tatum, he was 6 of 16 from 3, but 10 of 12 from the free throw line. I was saying 10 of 12 from 3. That is just ridiculous. But also looking at that stat line here, it didn't really seem right. So 10 of 12 from the free throw line for Jason Tatum, but 6 of 16 from 3. So a little bit of a typo there on Jason Tatum's player spotlight. But regardless, Jason Tatum doesn't really take away from his greatness in this game, because the point being made here is on the same floor as LeBron James and Luka Dončić, Jason Tatum was the best player, the best basketball player on the floor. On the same floor as Luka Dončić and LeBron James, Jason Tatum was the best player on the floor. And that to me was just a fact looking at this game, this primetime Saturday night game between the Celtics and the Lakers. Jason Tatum, he was incredible. He was absolutely incredible in this game, and paired up against Luka and LeBron. Luka and LeBron, of course, receive a lot of talk out there for the players in which they are and the talents in which they are. But Jason Tatum, looking at Jason Tatum in this contest, I mean, really, I don't know who's watching that game and going, yeah, Luka, give me Luka and LeBron over Jason Tatum, because Jason Tatum, from an athletic standpoint, from a quickness standpoint, from an agility standpoint, Jason Tatum is just more shifty than Luka and LeBron. I hate to turn this into just a comparing Tatum to Luka and LeBron, because everybody has um, their own great attributes that make them great players. But at the same time, you just look at Tatum's agility, you look at Tatum's quickness, his athleticism, his physicality compared to Luka and LeBron's. Jason Tatum, the way he plays the game of basketball and the way he's playing the game of basketball currently, he is seriously amidst. He's right now he's top 3 in the MVP voting, but that is that's nothing to spit at right now, folks. That's nothing to spit at. And a lot of people are talking about SGA, Nikola Jokic, uh, them winning the MVP, but Jason Tatum is right there on the doorstep too, because Jason Tatum, what will stand out, triple doubles, the conversation of triple doubles in recent years, a lot of people don't care about triple doubles as much as they used to, specifically during the mid 2010s when Russell Westbrook, it was nearly averaging a triple double. And then obviously Kevin Durant leaves the Oklahoma City Thunder and Russell Westbrook goes and averages a triple double for the season. A lot of people debated whether or not those stats were empty or whether Russ was just doing something rather historical. Well, it could be true on both sides, that Russ was maybe doing something historical while also putting up some empty triple doubles. But I would say triple doubles, although they can be empty at times, depending on how you go about getting them and what your efficiency is, depending on the player, I would say triple doubles still tell you a little bit about somebody's game from the standpoint of the all around aspect of players' games. This game by Jason Tatum, 40 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists. And really, when I look at triple doubles, the rebounding is important. Don't get me wrong. I want to see those rebounds. 12 rebounds for Jason Tatum means Jason Tatum was getting after it from a rebounding perspective and an effort perspective. So that's great to see. But I'm really honing in on the points and assists, because the points, Jason Tatum comes out and scores 40 points, gets himself to the free throw line 12 times, shoots 12 of 28 from the floor. But after doing all that work, taking 28 shots, getting to the line 12 times, scoring 40 points in this game. Well, Jason Tatum, he also dishes out 8 assists, nearly notches a triple double from an assist standpoint. But that's the level Jason Tatum is on right now. And that's the level that some of these other guys talk about, Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're the front runners for the MVP right now in the 2025 NBA season. But looking at Jason Tatum, the reason he's on par with these other players out there, and it used to not be a conversation between SGA and Tatum, but now it is. Uh, Looking at the other players, and really in NBA history, looking at other superstars out there, what has made other superstars great, and the superstars we see, Luka, LeBron, Giannis, Jokic, and SGA, as I was just talking about, what makes these other players great is the standpoint they can dominate offensively. Let's actually hone in on the offensive end of the floor here. On the offensive end of the floor, they can dominate from a scoring perspective. They can get their buckets, they can get to their spots, and they have enough skill in order to score wherever it's from. It could be from beyond the 3-point line, like Steph Curry. It could be inside, like Nikola Jokic. It can be from the mid range, like Kevin Durant. They can get their points. Great superstars can get their points whenever they want. But on top of that, getting other guys involved on the offensive end of the floor, getting the team involved from an offensive creation standpoint. That's what other stars typically excel at. That's what superstars excel at, is not only getting their own points, but getting everybody around them points as well. Obviously, LeBron James has been one of the best at doing that in the NBA for the last 20 years. And he was on display in this game between Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. But that's what also stood out to me about Jason Tatum, is the fact Luka and LeBron, for the creators they are, Jason Tatum was right there on par with them in this game. And you're not going to put Jason Tatum historically on par with Luka Dončić and LeBron James as a playmaker, but tonight, in this one game, in this one season, in this little time period here, Jason Tatum is on par with guys like LeBron James and Luka Dončić from an offensive creational standpoint. And that's where Jason Tatum is with his ball game right now on the offensive end of the floor. And that's why Jason Tatum is a top player in this league. Is Jason Tatum's ability to play make with the ball, ability to make, really, the decision making by Jason Tatum is just phenomenal. Really, it has everything to do with timing. It has everything to do with moving a defense, with his dribbles, with his eyes, with wherever he wants to go with the ball. Jason Tatum does a tremendous job at manipulating defenses, tremendous job at staying patient and allowing plays to form, whether that's for himself, taking advantage of mismatches, going hard towards the rim, or even on the perimeter, taking a shot in which he feels comfortable with taking and is open, say a wide open three, or looking at Jason Tatum and his scoring repertoire and what he's able to do, he's tremendous at playmaking for other players, getting other guys open off of cuts, off of pick and roll opportunities, and off of opportunities where he collapses a defense, forces help over on his aggressive drives, and finds a guy like Derek White, a guy like Drew Holiday, a guy like Kristaps Porzingis. Whether not Kristaps Porzingis wouldn't be in the corner. These other guys would be in the corner, but maybe on the wing for Kristaps Porzingis. But these guys on the corner and the wing, Jason Tatum, he has been at another level with his playmaking. That's what we talk about with the superstars ultimately, is they're not only guys who can get their own points, they can create points for other players. And that was Jason Tatum in this game tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers. And it's been Jason Tatum all season long. And really, this version of Jason Tatum, the 24-25 version of Jason Tatum, this is the best Jason Tatum we've ever seen out there on the basketball floor. Best. Not 2022, not 2024, not 2023. Jason Tatum, the last 3 seasons, was not up to this level. Jason Tatum got to the free throw line in this game, took 28 shots, and still dished to 8 assists while scoring 40 points. And not only did he do that, he went out there and aggressively grabbed 12 rebounds and asserted his dominance from a physical perspective in this game. He was the quickest player. He was the most consistently all-around skilled player in this game. He was one of the more aggressive players in the entire game, Jason Tatum was. And the fact the Celtics have this type of superstar on their roster doesn't get enough light, doesn't get enough credit from the standpoint of Jason Tatum is a Larry Bird-like player. He does all the little things. He plays hard. He is an all-around superstar. And the Celtics, that's what fits in with Celtics culture, is the all-around nitty-gritty guys. Really. And that's what Jason Tatum, when he steps out there on a basketball floor, that's how he plays. That's how he plays. And he doesn't get enough credit for it whatsoever. A lot of people out there that look at Jason Tatum, oh, pretty boy this, pretty boy that. But Jason Tatum, I mean, look, Brandon Jennings, always soft, superstar, blah, 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 whatever. But realistically, when Jason Tatum steps out there on a basketball floor, he's competitive. He's ferocious. He's aggressive. And really, in this game against the Los Angeles Lakers, he showed up to the moment. And that's what Jason Tatum, along with what we were talking about with Al Horford earlier, showing up during big moments. This is Jason Tatum as well. He shows up during the big moments. He does. And for the Celtics to have a superstar like that, very underrated in history, considering all the great, hard-playing Celtic superstars in Celtic history. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, haven't really talked about him too much in this postgame, but he was spectacular as well. Jaylen Brown, actually, in this game, looking at his stat line, 31 points, 13 of 25 from the floor, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals for Jaylen Brown. But Jaylen Brown is one of those superstars as well. The guys who do all the little things, play hard, had to earn their rotation spot. Can't say that for every superstar out there under max deals. But the Celtics have two of them, Tatum and Brown. They have two guys who have fought their way into their current positions and really are going to go down as two of some of the greatest Celtics of all time. And that's just a fact. That is just a fact. Now, let's see what else should I get into for this game. Well, the Lakers. I want to talk a little bit about the Lakers here before we hop off here. The Lakers, they are a contender. As crazy as it is to say, the Lakers, the Los Angeles Lakers, are contenders. I really, from my standpoint, look at the Los Angeles Lakers. Um, I I would not be shocked if LeBron goes on another playoff run. LeBron has just done amazing things in this NBA, in the National Basketball Association. Just amazing things. Obviously, made the finals, 9 out of 10 years, 8 years in a row, won the Eastern Conference, and won championships that just seemed impossible. When you think about 2016, LeBron James is going up against the 73-9 Warriors team, down 3-1, comes back in that series with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, other teammates around him, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith, Amon Shumpert. Those guys are important too, but LeBron James spearheaded that operation for the Cleveland Cavaliers in the 2016 NBA playoffs and did something that seemed impossible. Won a 28-3 Tom Brady-esque championship LeBron did that year, 2016. But then in 2020, LeBron wins another title in the bubble for his fourth. And that was a championship that was in limbo for quite a while because the NBA season obviously was paused for 4 months and came back in August, September. The finals were, I believe it was at the end of September, end of October, if I'm not mistaken, for the NBA finals. But LeBron wins there, rallies the Lakers there in the bubble in Orlando to win an NBA championship. We've seen LeBron do seemingly impossible things in this era. At age 40, LeBron James is doing impossible things every single night. From that standpoint, what makes me a non-believer in the Lakers or LeBron James potentially making a run? Nothing. Because LeBron James at age 40 is still somehow a top 10 NBA player. He's still a top 10 NBA player. I'm sorry. His IQ, his ability out on the floor. He's 40 and he's still bigger, more athletic than some of these guys coming into the league and have been in the league already. LeBron James is doing the impossible at 40 already, and you pair him up with Luka Dončić, who is arguably a top 3, if not top 5, NBA player. And I'm looking at this situation in Los Angeles going, look, the Lakers, they have two top, arguably, they have at least one top 5 NBA player right now in Luka Dončić. So you have one top 5 player in Luka Dončić. Your other superstar player is arguably a top 10 player in LeBron James, who is maybe a top 1 player all time. And then the rest of the Lakers roster, it's all scrappy guys who can go out there, can defend, can hit a 3-point shot, and can mesh well and be uplifted by Luka and LeBron. Guys like Austin Reeves, guys like Rui Hachimura, Jordan Goodwin. He's getting a run out with the Lakers right now. And yes, everybody looks at the Lakers roster and goes, oh, there's no big man. Jackson Hayes, your only big guy. And Alex Len, Christian Koloklo. How are the Lakers going to make a run with no big men in the West? That's a good question. I will say the Lakers are definitely lacking big men, but the Lakers are not lacking size. They're not lacking size. The only short player on the Lakers, the one player you look at and go, okay, his size is a little questionable, it's Gabe Vincent. It's Gabe Vincent, and Gabe Vincent has played better, certainly better as of late for the Los Angeles Lakers than he started his career out with the Lakers playing. But Gabe Vincent is also somebody who can get after it on the defensive end of the floor, even though he's a shorter player. Kind of reminds you of Peyton Pritchard in a little sense there. But the Lakers, they have guys who can defend multiple positions with size. With size. Think about some of these forwards for the Los Angeles Lakers. They are nearly the size of some centers. Some centers out there, 6'10, 6'11, might be 6'9 in some cases on the lower side. Obviously, some of the bigger ones can get over 7 foot. But the Lakers forwards, a lot of 6'8 guys, a lot of 6'9 guys, a lot of guys who can rival the height and physicality and size of other big men in the Western Conference, specifically a guy like Nikola Jokic. And that's what was so interesting seeing the Lakers and the Nuggets play is the fact Nikola Jokic thought for most of the game he was stifled by some of the Lakers defenders, some of the Lakers physicality, some of the Lakers size, and the Lakers tried to double Nikola Jokic in the game, in the Saturday primetime game in Denver. They did, the Lakers. But I look at the Lakers right now with Luka and LeBron, two arguable top 10 NBA players right now, two of which Luka just made the Western Conference Finals in 2022, finally made the finals in 2024. I had a point earlier this season saying the Nuggets and the Mavericks, they could go back to back in terms of making the finals, or back and forth, I should say, in making the finals out west because they had the two best half court players in Luka and Jokic. But Luka's on the Lakers now. LeBron James is his teammate. The Lakers have size to defend. They have the versatility to defend. They have guys who can hit 3-point shots. Why can't the Lakers go and make a run in the West? I will say there's more questions surrounding the Los Angeles Lakers right now in the West as a contender than some of the teams around them. I mean, you look at the Thunder, the Rockets, the Grizzlies, the Nuggets, they've all been together for this full year, if not multiple years. Whereas the Lakers, they've been together for what, 3 weeks, essentially, which is going to put more questions surrounding the Los Angeles Lakers. But if you really look at the squads out there, there are a lot of teams in the Western Conference that are young and arguably trustworthy. Because really in the Western Conference, that is a huge question right now with some of the top contending teams that people really like, but are a little on the fence with. Think about the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're really the dominant team out west right now, and they're dominating as much as the Cleveland Cavaliers are out east, yet people look at the Oklahoma City Thunder's age, the median age of the Thunder, and they go, which is young, I will say it's young, they look at the Thunder and go, is this young team experienced enough? Are they prepared enough for the NBA playoffs? They were prepared last year to go up in the first round against the Pelicans, swept the Pelicans, but then in the second round, who got the best of the Oklahoma City Thunder? It was Luka Dončić and the Dallas Mavericks. And I do have questions surrounding the Oklahoma City Thunder in regard to if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if he is compromised to some degree in the playoffs, you're not gonna fully shut him down, but you're gonna compromise him a little bit or try to take something away from his game in the playoffs by a team. If the Thunder see SGA compromised, who's their next guy? Is Jalen Williams going to be able to take over in those moments? Do the Thunder have enough on their roster with Holmgren and specifically Jalen Williams in terms of star power to go out there and take over games and take over moments in the NBA playoffs? That is still to be answered. I think that's a fairly, you look at the Thunder and really recent NBA history or all of NBA history, a team as young as the Thunder, it's very rare they break through and make the NBA Finals this soon. We know how good the Thunder are running away with the number one seed. They were the number one seed last year in the West on the last day of the season as well. But the Thunder in history, not too many teams this young break through and have deep playoff runs, see consistent success in the NBA playoffs. And considering that as well, we'll say the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're oddly enough the franchise with the most experience from a young team breaking through and making the finals because the Thunder, really, they were the last club to do that. The 2012 Thunder with James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant. That MVP level big three the Thunder had long ago. That team was a very, very young squad on par with this Thunder squad, in which broke through and made the NBA Finals. So the Thunder, there is some experience from that standpoint as a franchise, but with this specific team, will this specific Thunder team with SGA, Chet, Jalen Williams, Hardenstein, Alex Caruso, will they all be able to break through as young of a squad as the Oklahoma City Thunder have? That's where the Lakers, if you look at their players, a lot more experience on the Lakers roster. Obviously, with LeBron James, the Lakers can slow the Thunder down a little bit. The Thunder like to play with pace, like to cut a lot. Can the Lakers take away those cuts with a lot of physicality, a lot of bumping? And can they slow the game down? Can they take a little bit of that pace away from the Oklahoma City Thunder? The Lakers can certainly do that. But looking at other teams like the Rockets, again, very young team, kind of the same conversation as the Oklahoma City Thunder, even less so because the Rockets weren't in the playoffs last year, whereas the Thunder were the number one seed last year and even made a tiny little playoff run there to the semifinals against the Dallas Mavericks. So the Rockets, they have even more questions as a young team than the Oklahoma City Thunder, as most of their core still very, very young. But looking at other teams, such as, say, the Memphis Grizzlies, a little bit more experienced of a team, but people have questions surrounding the Grizzlies' depth, and they have questions surrounding the availability of Ja Morant. Ja Morant, he's almost a Joel Embiid level player when it comes to playing games. I mean, really, Ja Morant plays every other game, and it's a surprise when Ja Morant is out on the floor. And when you're talking about one of your best superstars, your best players, if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, if you're talking about him in a sense of being in and out of the lineup as much as Ja Morant's been this season, that's definitely a team that people aren't going to trust come playoff time. And just to, not if you look at the reliability of them and in the regular season, what makes anyone think that Ja Morant is going to be able to play consistently come playoff time? And if your star player is missing that many games on that many occasions, and that's really what we want to hone in on here, it's not as if Ja Morant has missed a bunch of time and just, oh, say missed the first 20 games of the season or missed a slew of 20 games within the season just because of an injury. It's not been like that with Ja Morant. It's been, oh, he'll play 2 games, then he's not playing 2 games, then he'll play a game, then he won't play a game, then he'll play 3 straight games, and then he's out for 4 games. I mean, that's the kind of schedule Ja Morant will go through. It's not some of this, oh, well, he missed 10 games because of a strain here, and now he's back in the lineup. It's never like that with Ja Morant. He's always in and out of the lineup constantly. And for your superstar, if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, you can't be feeling confident that Ja Morant's availability is an availability in which can last 4 straight rounds in the NBA playoffs in the toughest moments against some of the toughest competition in the world. I mean, the Memphis Grizzlies, for as quality of a team as they've been this season, for as great as Taylor Jenkins is as a head coach, coaching that team up, uplifting the role players on that roster, some of the younger players on their roster. The Grizzlies, there are just too many holes surrounding the availability and the look of the squad that definitely make people a little bit queasy about Memphis come playoff time. Then going down the list, you have the Denver Nuggets, who really, the Denver Nuggets, I think most people trust the Denver Nuggets as much as any other team out there because really looking at the history and looking at, I would say, just the Nuggets in general, the Nuggets have the best player in the entire NBA. So, for one, the Nuggets will have an advantage in almost every single series, pretty much every single series, of having the best player out on the floor, which certainly does something to your ball club when you have the best player in basketball on your team. That's just plain and simple right there. The Nuggets have the best player, Nikola Jokic. Could be a 4 or 5 time MVP out there if voters really felt that way about Nikola Jokic. The numbers certainly say that, but the voters, they get a little fatigued over time. But the Nuggets, they have the best NBA player on their team. Their experience from the standpoint of they've won the NBA championship 2 years ago in 2023. Last year, they were defeated at home in a game 7 by a Minnesota Timberwolves team constructed specifically to beat the Denver Nuggets. And yet this year, the Denver Nuggets come in clearly a little bit of a degraded squad from what they've seen in the past. Obviously, Bruce Brown leaves to the Pacers after their championship season. Contavious Caldwell Pope leaves last year to the Orlando Magic. Yet, looking at those deals and the way those players have been really thrown around by other teams, the Denver Nuggets kind of lucked out on not paying Bruce Brown and Contavious Caldwell Pope. And yet, right now, this Denver team, although they lucked out on not paying those guys, they still miss them from the standpoint of, well, that's just less talent on the squad in general. But Denver has found it elsewhere. They found it in guys like Russell Westbrook, who's actually been a solid option for the Denver Nuggets this season on a minimum deal. Came in with the Denver Nuggets last offseason, really playing their sixth man of the year role. And he's actually been a solid option for the Denver Nuggets. I mean, really, Russell Westbrook, the way his back half of his career has gone, outside of being with the Los Angeles Lakers here, Russell Westbrook's fit in nicely with some of the teams he's been on as a cutter, a guy who can handle the ball a little bit, a guy who can actually increasingly shoot the ball at a higher clip. Russell Westbrook has fit in well in Denver, and he's also just a guy who can go out there and score the ball consistently in moments where benches typically can. There are a lot of bench players out there that can't consistently score the ball. Russell Westbrook is actually a scoring threat when he comes into the game and handles the basketball. I mean, he was once the NBA MVP. He's certainly gone from those days, but at the same time, Russell Westbrook is somebody that can be relied upon for points off the Denver bench. But other guys out there like Christian Brown, he has taken a step up within his offensive game. He's taken a step up within his defensive game, just a step up overall as a player. Somebody like Christian Brown, he's playing a more Contavious Caldwell Pope like role right now for the Nuggets and filling it well. A guy like Julian Strother barely got any minutes last year, yet this year you can see he's very much a part of the Denver rotation, and even Peyton Watson too is hurt right now. But Peyton Watson is also somebody in which can come in and provide Denver some minutes. So Denver, looking at the Denver Nuggets right now, I think that's really the team out west that most people believe in the most, considering their experience and the star players, the duo at the top. Didn't even mention Jamal Murray in here, but Jamal Murray, he's kind of found his step again. It seemed like last year in the playoffs and even coming into this year, Jamal Murray was not healthy. There was something going on. And I even said at the beginning of the year, Jamal Murray might need to turn into a little bit of a Chris Paul esque player. And he does have some of those shifty tools within his game, and that IQ in his game, Jamal Murray does, and some of that skill as a guard in his game to maintain himself in the league. And that was a little scary considering Jamal Murray's he's south of the age of 30, but at the same time, Jamal Murray, he's found a next step. He's found a new step now. So from that standpoint, the Nuggets certainly a more formidable team right now as a contender in the West than they were to enter the season, with some of the development of the players, the development of the team cohesion, and the development of, I would say, the redevelopment of um, the star play of Jamal Murray. But on top of that, the Nuggets, they have the best player in the NBA, and that's why I would say they're likely the most formidable team. They're the most. I wouldn't say they're the See, this is the thing. When you say favorite in the West, like there's actually a betting odds favorite, or there's an odds market favorite. But at the same time, if you were to gauge the public or really gauge individual people, the favorite in the West, it's probably going to say Oklahoma City just because of the record, the odds, blah blah blah. But it probably should be the Denver Nuggets right now, just because that experience, just because of the way the roster plays, the best player aspect, all of that. But again, you look at the standings, the Nuggets, will they have home court in some of these series? Where will they fall in the NBA standings if they do? Because the Lakers right now, they're at number 2. So in a series between the Nuggets and the Lakers have the home court in that scenario. And really, you just look at the main point here, the entirety of this point, and I'm getting a little long-winded kind of talking about each individual West team here, but the Lakers, if you look at all the West teams, why can't it be them? I mean, I hate to advocate for this as a Celtics analyst here, but I'm just being real. The Lakers, with what they have on their roster, they have shooting, they have physicality, they have defense, they have 2 top 10 NBA players in Luka and LeBron. And those will be questions. Those are probably their two worst defenders, Luka and LeBron out there. Probably the Lakers' 2 worst defenders. There's still a lot of size with the Los Angeles Lakers to work with and muck things up with. I just look at the Lakers relative to everybody else in the West, particularly at the top, and go, why can't it be the Lakers right now? Why can't OKC's young? Memphis, their availability is all over the place. Denver is just a lesser squad than in recent years. The Rockets, still a very, very young team. If you want to go down the line, I wouldn't. The Clippers, they play well, but they are just strikingly mediocre. Really, their star play is just not there on a nightly basis. Kawhi, James Harden, is Kawhi going to play? Is he not going to play? James Harden, we've all had the conversation a million times with him in the past, talking about him going through 4 rounds of the NBA playoffs. The Warriors are actually a team that look like they could. You might want to add them to the conversation just a little bit, but their depth is a little bit of a question. Going down the line, Minnesota. Minnesota is that team that a lot of people want to be good because they were last season, and it feels like they should be good just because of their roster. But in reality, Minnesota is just a completely discombobulated mess, specifically on the offensive end of the floor, which last year they weren't that great offensively with one of the more talented offensive centers of all time in Karl Anthony Towns. This year they take Karl Anthony Towns and his efficiency out of the offensive end. Well, out of an already terrible offensive team last year, the one of the I shouldn't say the worst, not worst, but a bad offensive team, the Minnesota Timberwolves last year, they take out one of their best offensive gems in Karl Anthony Towns. What does everybody think is going to happen? It's going to be discombobulated offense. It's going to be stagnant offense. It's going to be Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, whoever thought they could actually play together. They can't. They absolutely cannot. They're both tremendous ball stoppers. Minnesota Timberwolves aren't going anywhere in this year's playoffs, unfortunately. After last year's run, the Timberwolves are going, unfortunately, nowhere. But if you just look at the entirety of the West, I mean, really, the Lakers, they're there at number 2. They're just as formidable as any other team. And all of a sudden, people are going, oh, they're not contenders. Luka and LeBron, this is a wasted season, blah, blah, blah. That's really not the case in Los Angeles. That's really not the case. They're here to compete. The Los Angeles Lakers are here to compete with LeBron James and Luka Dončić. And really what we're seeing here, right here, no, can't get the points the right way. Boston, LA, this could be your NBA Finals. And it wouldn't shock me. It really wouldn't shock me one bit whatsoever. It really wouldn't. But if that is the case, the Boston Celtics in this contest proved themselves to be maybe a little better, maybe not a lot better than the Los Angeles Lakers. As the Boston Celtics, they defeat the Los Angeles Lakers 111-101 at the Garden. Talking there for about 20 minutes on the Lakers and their ability to contend. I really do believe this Lakers team could make some noise come playoff time in the West. The West every year with the Western Conference, just so interesting. East, I don't know what it is with Eastern Conference teams. Maybe it's the markets out east, bigger markets, more complacency within the fact of just selling tickets, putting butts in seats. But out west is just competitive. Out east feels like the tiers are set for the teams, whereas the West, it's the wild West. I think you can certainly deem that to be true about the NBA's Western Conference, because right now the teams you have across the board in the standings, I mean, you're looking at all the way down to the 6th seed, really, the Warriors. I know the Clippers are a little bit ahead of them, but really looking at the Western Conference standings, anybody 1 through 6, maybe excluding the Clippers. So 1 through 6 throughout the Clippers. So 5 teams in the West, I think, could actually win the Western Conference this year, just looking at their abilities. We've already gone through each team, but the Western Conference, every single year, it's just this huge crazy mess of the top teams. You don't always believe in the top teams. The mid-tier teams, they're not quite as good as the top tier teams, but still on a level in which they could challenge them and even beat them in a series. We've seen that so many times play out in the NBA's Western Conference. But really, looking at this game here between the Celtics and Lakers, moving forward, the Boston Celtics, they still have a tremendous opportunity to go on their home floor and grab some wins. You know, jutting back out east, we're talking about the Western Conference, but let's talk about the East real quick. Not the Eastern Conference, but just the East Coast, where the Boston Celtics play at the TD Garden. The Boston Celtics have not been great at the TD Garden this year yet. This little homestand here, the 7-game homestand by the Boston Celtics, it's a time period where the Boston Celtics can actually cushion. I don't know if cushion's the right word, but they can kind of fluff their home record a little bit, and they've been doing it as of late here this week with the recent games on the schedule. The Boston Celtics, they can fluff their home schedule just a little bit and really put some good wins onto the schedule as well. Really, the toughest game ahead of the Boston Celtics right now, it's that Oklahoma City Thunder game. Now, if you look at the home schedule, it went Cleveland, Denver, big 2-game stretch there. Philadelphia, Portland, all right, a little lesser right there. Los Angeles and the Lakers, to the Jazz, and then, of course, to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So within that, Celtics, those are 4 tough games out of the 7 Celtics played at home. 4 tough games. You have the Cavaliers game, you have the Nuggets game, you have the Lakers game, and now the Oklahoma City Thunder game on the horizon. Celtics are 2-1 in those games at home, and the one they lost was just kind of let's call it a silly one against the Cleveland Cavaliers the other night. The Boston Celtics came into that game, absolutely started dominating, and just let the Cavs chip back until the Cavs were on top. You really look at the Celtics schedule in between that, a lot of nonsense. I mean, the Sixers, the Blazers, and now you look at upon the schedule the Utah Jazz. Those games, the Celtics, those should be resting opportunities. Thankfully, the back-to-back Sixers, Blazers, they were actually opportunities in which the Celtics, we're going to sneeze here, folks. We got to. Nope, we're good. We're good. No sneezing here. No sneezing here. We're good. But you look at the schedule with the Boston Celtics, they've had some easy games on the schedule as of late at home, even amidst the harder games. They played easier games against the Philadelphia 76ers, against the Portland Trail Blazers. And then you look at the games around them, they're all tough. And really what we want to see out of the Boston Celtics is in these tough games, they want to bring their energy, they want to bring their intensity, and the availability too. Let's not forget about that, but the availability of the Boston Celtics is important within these big games, and I think we've been seeing it more so as of late from the Boston Celtics, is the Celtics are bringing their energy, they're bringing their intensity, they're bringing their availability as well in these games. Usually guys are suited up and ready to go. Kristaps Porzingis, of course, didn't play this one, but Drew Holiday was ready to go in this affair. Yet these other games, the Blazers game, the Sixers game, the Jazz game up on the horizon, these are games in which the Boston Celtics should come out, handle right away, grab big leads in, and have their players rest, whether they're playing or not. I mean, really, look at some of the rest as of late. Jason Tatum, he didn't play against the Portland Trailblazers on the first night of a back-to-back, played on the second night of a back-to-back against the Philadelphia 76ers, where Jaylen Brown, they switched spots from that perspective. The Celtics, they rested Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford. They rested Drew Holiday during that back-to-back between the Sixers and the Blazers. Coming up on the horizon with the Utah Jazz, this is going to be another game where the Celtics can rest players in, but also handle from a perspective of whoever's playing on court can rest too at the end of the game. That's really what we want to see in these contests. As the Celtics, we know they're going to play close games against teams like the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Cavaliers, the Thunder. But in between the margins, in between the lines, against putrid teams like the Sixers, like the Blazers, like the Utah Jazz, the Celtics have to come out, bring intensity early, and make sure that the end of the game, that's time for guys like Jordan Walsh, guys like Baylor Shireman, guys out there, if J.D. Davison is called up from Maine, guys like that out on the floor. Xavier Tillman this year, unfortunately. That's what the Celtics want to be doing in these games. And the Celtics have 2 more games on their homestand coming up here between the Utah Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunder, which we will have you guys covered for those games here on the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show. This is going to do it for me here. Celtics, Lakers. Celtics, they're not swept by the Los Angeles Lakers this season. Earlier in January, the Boston Celtics went out west, dropped an absolute egg versus the Los Angeles Lakers, and really is just one of the more embarrassing Celtics performances of the entire season. Yet the Celtics rebound tonight against the Los Angeles Lakers on NBA ABC Saturday night primetime, beating the Los Angeles Lakers 111-101. The Boston Celtics dominate the third quarter, allow the Lakers to come back a little bit there in the fourth quarter, but round it out with a nice solid 10-point win at home. The Celtics looking ahead at the Utah Jazz on the schedule, followed by the Oklahoma City Thunder at home. Of course, we will have you guys covered here on the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show for that game. But that's going to do it for me tonight. As I always say, well, let's first of all cue the music. As I always say, thank you all for watching. I'm your host, Damon Sarlando, and go Celtics.